One prophet saw a line of yellow dust that would kill everything it touched, stretching across entire countries. An ancient text described a future where the gods would abandon humanity, leaving the earth barren and silent, a land of ghosts. A simple peasant foretold a time when people would build boxes with images that would drain their souls and make them hate each other. These aren't scenes from a horror movie. They are glimpses from prophecies that have, for many, faded into the mists of time, offering chilling visions of futures we hope never come to pass. Number 12. The seer who foresaw Scotland's empty glens. Coenwch Othar, known as the Brahan Seer, was a legendary figure from 17th century Scotland. Stories say he gained his gift of prophecy from a magical white stone, holed in the center, given to him by fairies or the spirit of his mother. While many of his predictions concerned local families and lairds, some painted a much broader, bleaker picture of the future for the Scottish Highlands. He spoke of a time when the glens, once teeming with people, would fall silent. He foresaw the coming of sheep, then deer, to replace the human inhabitants. This prediction chillingly mirrored the Highland Clearances of the 18th and 19th centuries, a brutal period where landlords forcibly evicted tenants to make way for large-scale sheep farming. Imagine your home, your community, your way of life simply erased from the landscape, replaced by animals deemed more profitable. The seer didn't just stop at depopulation. He also spoke of strange black, hornless cattle, often interpreted as Aberdeen Angus cattle, which became popular later, and carriages without horses, traveling through the glens. More unsettling were his visions of environmental change. He prophesied that the black rain would fall, and that the sea would encroach upon the land. One particularly famous prophecy connected to the estate of Fairburn Tower detailed that when a certain tree, the Doon tree, fell 3 times, the estate would pass from the Mackenzie family. Beyond local concerns, he spoke of a day when the natural thread is broken and the Lovett estates are without a male heir. Predicted that the time will come when the jawbone of the big sheep or the deer will be used as a shoehorn in the MacLeod's country. This suggested a complete overturning of the natural order and societal structures. These visions weren't of fire and brimstone apocalypses, but of a slow creeping desolation, a cultural and environmental emptying that would leave the land beautiful but haunted by what was lost. Prophecies of the Brahan Seer, passed down mainly through oral tradition, serve as a somber reminder of how progress for some can mean utter devastation for others, leaving behind a future that is empty and eerily quiet. Number 11. The Gnostic vision of a world ruled by a flawed creator. Basilides was a Gnostic teacher in Alexandria during the 2nd century, a time when early Christian thought was a vibrant, diverse, and sometimes contentious landscape. Gnosticism itself offered a radically different view of the universe and humanity's place in it. Many Gnostic texts were lost or suppressed for centuries, only rediscovered in modern times like the Nag Hammadi Library in 1945. Basilides' detailed teachings are known mostly through the writings of his critics, like Irenaeus and Hippolytus. But even through this lens, a chilling cosmology emerges. He proposed a complex system of emanations from a supreme, unknowable God. Far down this chain of being, he suggested, was a lesser, flawed deity, the God of the Old Testament who created the physical world. This creator God, often called the Archon or Demiurge in Gnostic thought, was not evil in a simplistic sense, but ignorant of the true God, and thus created a world that was inherently imperfect, a kind of prison for the divine sparks trapped within human beings. Imagine living in a world designed not by a perfect, all-loving deity, but by a lesser, perhaps even arrogant entity who believes himself to be the ultimate power. This framework paints a dystopian picture where suffering, chaos, and ignorance are not just unfortunate accidents but are woven into the very fabric of existence. The world in this view is a place of illusion, designed to keep humanity enslaved to material concerns and blind to its true spiritual origins. Basilides also taught about cosmic cycles and eons, with the potential for worlds to degrade or fall further into darkness if the archons, the rulers of these lower realms, exert too much control. The ultimate dystopia in this Gnostic vision is not necessarily one of fire and brimstone, but a spiritual one. A state of perpetual ignorance, of being trapped in a flawed system, mistaking the prison for reality, and worshipping the jailer as a god. Prophecies embedded in this worldview were not about specific future events, but about the ongoing condition of humanity and the cosmos, a state of spiritual exile and the difficult path to gnosis or knowledge that could lead to liberation. The lost nature of these texts for so long meant that this alternative, unsettling view of our world and its creator remained buried a secret history of spiritual unease. Number 10. The ancient Egyptian lament for a land forsaken. Long before the prophets of the Bible or the seers of Greece, an Egyptian sage named Neferti, during the reign of Pharaoh Amenemhat I, around 1991 to 1978 BC, he composed what is known as the Prophecy of Neferti. While framed as a prophecy made to King Sneferu centuries earlier, it was likely written to legitimize the then-current dynasty by contrasting a chaotic past or a feared future with a promised golden age under a new king. However, the vision of chaos it paints is profoundly dystopian and has resonated through millennia. Neferti describes a future Egypt turned upside down, a land utterly ravaged by internal strife and foreign invasion. He speaks of the sun being veiled and not shining, of the Nile running dry, or perhaps even with blood. The land is completely perished, no remainder, not even the black of the nail as a remnant of what was fated. One translation reads, "Imagine the lifeblood of your civilization, the Nile, ceasing to sustain you." Neferti describes social order completely breaking down. "I show you the land in turmoil. The man of low birth is now rich. The rich man is now a pauper. I show you the son as a foe, the brother as an enemy, a man killing his own father." He foretells a time when all good things have fled and the land is destroyed and no longer has any care taken of it. Foreigners, Asiatics, are depicted as overrunning the land. Foes are in the east. Asiatics have come down into Egypt. No one will sail north to Byblos today. What shall we do for cedars for our mummies? This points to a complete breakdown of trade, infrastructure, and even sacred funerary rites. The land itself will be utterly ruined. Prophecy paints a picture of not just war and famine, but a deep spiritual malaise, a sense of abandonment and utter despair, while it ends with the promise of a Redeemer King who will restore order. The detailed and vivid descriptions of the preceding chaos serve as a terrifying vision of societal collapse. This lost prophecy, rediscovered on papyrus, offers a chilling glimpse into what ancient Egyptians feared most, a world where Mayat, order, justice, truth, is shattered, leaving only Isfet, chaos, in its wake. It's a future where everything familiar and sacred is desecrated, and the very land seems to mourn. Number 9. The mythical abbess, who saw an age of fiery trials. Hildegard von Bingen, a German Benedictine abbess, writer, composer, philosopher, mystic, visionary, and medical writer of the 12th century, was a towering intellect of her time. Her prophetic visions, which she claimed to have received since childhood, were recorded in works like Scivia's Know the Ways. While many of her visions concerned the church and spiritual matters, Some offered stark, apocalyptic glimpses into the future of humanity, describing periods of immense trial and tribulation. One such period she foresaw was what some interpreters have called the Age of the Fiery Horseman, or a time of great purges and upheaval. She spoke of 5 ferocious epochs that humanity would endure before the end of times. These were not just vague pronouncements. She detailed specific societal decays. She predicted a time when justice would be trampled, when rulers would be corrupt, and when spiritual fervor would wane, replaced by materialism and a coldness of heart. Hildegard envisioned a future where the clergy themselves would become lax and worldly, neglecting their duties and leading people astray. This spiritual decay would then spread to the laity. The peoples, too, will then be agitated by strong winds. That is, they will be torn by many scandals and heresies, she wrote. She foresaw a time of widespread doubt, where faith would be challenged, and many would fall away. Her visions included terrifying images of cosmic disturbances, mirroring the moral chaos on Earth. She described a black fire and a great coldness that would afflict humanity, symbols of spiritual desolation and divine judgment. Some of her prophecies spoke of a powerful tyrant, an antichrist figure who would rise to persecute the faithful and deceive many with false miracles. This period would be marked by immense suffering wars and natural disasters, a great cleansing before a renewal of faith. What makes Hildegard's visions particularly chilling is their psychological depth. She wasn't just predicting external events, but a deep, internal decay of the human spirit, a loss of connection to the divine, leading to a world consumed by its own failings. Her complex and allegorical writings, once studied widely, but then perhaps less emphasized outside theological circles, offer a lost map to a future where humanity faces the consequences of its spiritual neglect, a chilling trial by fire before any hope of dawn. Number 8. The Serbian peasants' visions of a world hooked on boxes with images. Mitar Tarabic was an illiterate peasant from the small Serbian village of Kremna in the 19th century. He claimed to receive visions of the future, which were recorded by his godfather, a local priest named Zahariu Zaharic. These prophecies, sometimes called the Kremna prophecy, remained relatively obscure outside of Serbia for a long time, but gained more attention in the late 20th century. While some predict local events and Serbian wars, others paint a broader, more chilling picture of humanity's future, touching on technology, social alienation, and global conflict. Tarabic spoke of a time when people would dig wells and extract some kind of gold that will give light, but it will bring more sorrow than joy. This has been interpreted by some as a reference to oil and the conflicts it fuels. Perhaps his most striking visions relate to future technology and its impact on human connection. He reportedly said, "People will build a box with some sort of gadget with images, but they will not be able to communicate with me already dead, even though this image gadget will be as close to this other world as hairs on the human scalp are close to each other." This is often seen as a remarkably prescient description of television or even the internet, continued, saying people would become alienated from each other because of these devices. They will care more for their gadget than for their closest relatives. Man will trust his gadget more than his first neighbor. Imagine a 19th century peasant describing a world where families sit in the same room, each staring at their own glowing screen, isolated in their own digital worlds. Tarabic also predicted that people will flee from the cities to the countryside, and that Serbia will be the size of an average kingdom, and it will be rich and happy because God will look after it. However, before this, he saw great global calamities. He spoke of, "The whole world will be plagued by a strange disease, and nobody will be able to find a cure. Everybody will say, 'I know, because I am learned and smart,' but nobody will know anything." He warned of a time when love will become less and less frequent, and hatred will grow so much that people will hate each other more than they love themselves. His prophecies, conveyed in simple rustic language, offer a lost warning from the past about a future where technological marvels might lead to spiritual emptiness and a breakdown of human compassion, a chillingly familiar dystopian landscape. Number 7. The stark choice at the end of the two ways. The Didache, also known as the Teaching of the 12 Apostles, is a brief, anonymous early Christian treatise, dated by most scholars to the late 1st or early 2nd century. It's considered one of the oldest surviving pieces of Christian literature outside the New Testament. For centuries, it was considered lost to the wider world, known only through references in other ancient writings, until a Greek manuscript was rediscovered in 1873 in Constantinople. The Didache is a manual of Christian instruction, covering ethics, rituals like baptism and Eucharist, and church organization. The final chapter, however, shifts dramatically in tone, offering a stark and chilling prophecy about the end times. It builds upon the opening theme of the two ways, the way of life and the way of death. The end times, it suggests, will be a culmination of humanity, largely choosing the way of death. The prophecy begins with a call to vigilance. Watch for your life's sake. Let not your lamps be quenched, nor your loins unloosed. But be ye ready, for ye know not the hour in which our Lord cometh. It then describes a period of increasing lawlessness and deception. For in the last days, false prophets and corrupters shall be multiplied, and the sheep shall be turned into wolves, and love shall be turned into hate. This vision of betrayal and inversion is deeply unsettling. Those meant to guide will mislead, and fundamental human emotions will curdle. The Didache foretells the arrival of the world deceiver, a figure who will appear as Son of God, and shall do signs and wonders, and the earth shall be delivered into his hands, and he shall do iniquitous things which have never yet come to pass since the beginning. This powerful Antichrist-like figure will not just be a political tyrant, but a spiritual one, performing false miracles to lead humanity astray. The prophecy continues. Then shall the creation of men come into the fire of trial, and many shall be made to stumble, and shall perish. It's a vision of a great sifting, a period of immense suffering and moral testing. Only those who endure in their faith will be saved by the curse itself. The final imagery is of the signs of the truth appearing. First, the sign of an outspreading in heaven, then the sign of the sound of the trumpet, and third, the resurrection of the dead, but not of all, but as it is said, the Lord shall come, and all his saints with him. This rediscovered text offers a raw early Christian view of a dystopian climax to history, where humanity faces its ultimate test amidst chaos and the rise of a global deceiver. Number 6. The apocryphal revelation of hell on earth. The Apocalypse of Peter is an early Christian text from the 2nd century, attributed to the Apostle Peter. It was widely read in early Christian communities, even considered by some like Clement of Alexandria to be canonical scripture for a time. However, it eventually fell out of favor and was deemed apocryphal, becoming one of the lost books of early Christianity until portions of it were rediscovered in the late 19th and early 20th centuries in Ethiopia and Egypt. What makes this text particularly chilling is its graphic and detailed descriptions of the torments awaiting sinners in hell, which are often presented as direct consequences or continuations of their earthly misdeeds, implying a world already mirroring hellish qualities. More than just a tour of the afterlife, some interpretations suggest its vivid imagery of suffering and divine judgment also served as a prophecy of a world collapsing under the weight of its own sin, a kind of hell on earth preceding the final judgment. The text describes Jesus revealing to Peter the fates of different types of sinners, Blasphemers are hung by their tongues. Women who adorned themselves for adultery are hung by their hair over bubbling mire. Murderers are cast into a pit of venomous reptiles. Those who persecuted the righteous are tormented in a place of unquenchable fire. The imagery is relentless and visceral, designed to shock the reader into repentance. But beyond these individual punishments, the Apocalypse of Peter also contains broader apocalyptic visions. It speaks of a time when the stars shall be troubled and the pillars of the world shall fall. It describes false messiahs and persecutions of the faithful, and there shall be signs and wonders from them. It says of these deceivers, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect. The world depicted is one where evil seems to triumph, where justice is perverted, and where the faithful are under siege. Chilling implication is that the horrifying punishments in hell are merely an extension and intensification of the suffering and moral degradation already rampant in a fallen world. The lines blur between the present wicked age and the future eternal torment. This lost apocalypse offers a terrifying vision where the dystopian realities of sin, cruelty, deceit, exploitation, blasphemy are not just abstract concepts but create a tangible, nightmarish, a world groaning under a curse of its own making. Number 5. The German well digger who saw a yellow line of death. Alois Armeyer was an ordinary man, a well digger and dowser from Freilassing, Bavaria, in post-World War II Germany. He gained local fame for his apparent clairvoyant abilities, helping people find lost objects or locate water sources. However, his most disturbing visions, recorded from the late 1940s until his death in 1959, concerned a future global conflict, a third Great War that would be swift, brutal, and employ terrifying new weapons. His prophecies were not widely disseminated internationally at the time, remaining somewhat lost to the broader public, though they circulated in German-speaking areas. What makes Armeyer's predictions so chilling is their stark, almost newsreel-like detail, and the sheer horror of the events he described. He didn't speak in vague allegories, but in concrete, terrifying images. Armeyer foresaw a sudden outbreak of war, possibly starting in the Balkans or the Middle East. It all calls peace, Shalom. Then it will occur. A new Middle East war suddenly flares up. Big naval forces are facing hostility in the Mediterranean. The situation is strained. He then described a massive, swift invasion of Western Europe by Russian forces. The Russians march into Germany. Tanks are rolling through Germany. These tanks will come from the east and will drive with high speed to the Rhine. But the most dystopian aspect of his visions was the description of a superweapon, something beyond conventional understanding at the time. He spoke of aircraft dropping a yellow dust, or creating a yellow line, or a death strip. Where it falls, everything will be dead. No tree, no bush, no cattle, no grass. This all will become withered and black, he stated. Everything that comes into contact with it becomes dead. The houses are still standing. What it is, I do not know, and I cannot tell it. It is a long line. Who goes over this line dies. This has been interpreted by some as a prediction of chemical or radiological warfare on a catastrophic scale. Armeyer also spoke of a 3-day darkness, earthquakes, and massive societal collapse following this brief, terrible war, after which only a small number of people would survive to rebuild a simpler world. His visions paint a future of unimaginable destruction, where technological advancement leads not to progress, but to swift, indiscriminate death. Number 4. The Lament of Hermes for a World Abandoned by the Gods. The Asclepius, also known as the Perfect Discourse, is a Hermetic text attributed to the legendary sage Hermes Trismegistus a syncretic figure combining the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. This text, likely written in Greek in Egypt between the 2nd and 4th centuries EE, survives primarily in a Latin translation. While much of Hermetic literature deals with cosmology, magic, and spiritual enlightenment, one section of the Asclepius contains a powerful and deeply melancholic prophecy known as the Lament. It foretells a time when Egypt, the sacred land, the very image of heaven on earth, will be abandoned by the gods and fall into desolation. This prophecy, though ancient, has been seen by some as a lost allegory for a broader spiritual decay and the dystopian consequences of humanity turning away from the divine. The lament describes a future where darkness will be preferred to light and death will be thought more profitable than life. No one will raise his eyes to heaven. The pious will be deemed insane and the impious wise. The madman will be thought a brave man and the wicked will be esteemed as good. This inversion of all values paints a chilling picture of societal and moral collapse. The gods, Hermes predicts, will depart from humanity, and then the gods will depart from mankind, a grievous thing, and only evil angels will remain who will mingle with men and drive the poor wretches by force into all sorts of reckless crime, into wars and robberies and frauds and all things hostile to the nature of the soul. Imagine a world where divine presence and guidance are completely withdrawn, leaving humanity prey to malevolent influences and its own worst impulses. The soil will turn barren and the very air will sicken in sullen stagnation. This is a vision of total cosmic and terrestrial entropy, a world literally dying because of humanity's spiritual failings. Egypt, specifically, the land of temples and shrines, will be filled with tombs and corpses. This ancient prophecy, with its haunting imagery of a world forsaken and decaying, serves as a timeless warning about the potential for a future devoid of sanctity, beauty, and hope, a truly chilling dystopia of spiritual emptiness. Number 3. Mother Shipton's Rhymes of Iron Ships and World's End. Ursula Southiel, better known as Mother Shipton, is an English folk figure, a supposed prophetess and witch who lived in Yorkshire during the 16th century. Her life is shrouded in legend, and many of the prophecies attributed to her were likely fabricated or heavily embellished much later, particularly in a book published in 1684 by Richard Head, and even more sensationally in the 19th century. Despite the dubious authenticity of many specific verses, the idea of Mother Shipton and her chilling predictions has persisted, becoming a kind of lost folk prophecy that resurfaces in times of anxiety. Some of the verses attributed to her paint a future filled with technological wonders that turn sinister, leading to widespread chaos and a dystopian end. One of the most famous and likely 19th century prophetic verses attributed to her states, "Carriages without horses shall go, and accidents fill the world with woe. Around the world thoughts shall fly in the twinkling of an eye." While this accurately predicts cars and telegraph internet, it also tethers these advancements to woe and implies a downside to rapid communication. More ominously, other verses speak of societal breakdown and environmental catastrophe. "Iron in the water shall float as easy as a wooden boat, iron ships. Gold shall be found and shown in a land that's not now known. Discovery of gold in new lands." These seem mundane, but they are often set within a context of increasing turmoil. More chillingly, some prophecies speak of global conflict and natural disasters. "A fiery dragon will cross the sky 6 times before this earth shall die. Mankind will tremble and frightened be, for the 6th herald's in this prophecy." These verses describe an escalating series of warnings or terrible events. The most dystopian elements arise in predictions of widespread war and a breakdown of the natural order. When pictures seem alive with movements free, when ships like fishes swim beneath the sea, when men like birds shall scour the sky, then half the world, deep drenched in blood, shall die. This connects technological marvels, cinema, TV, submarines, airplanes, directly to immense bloodshed. Further verses, also of questionable origin but widely circulated, describe cataclysms. For those who live the century through in fear and trembling, this shall do. Flee to the mountains and the dens, to bog and forest and wild fens. It's a vision of humanity reduced to a terrified, hunted state, seeking refuge from an unnamed horror. Storms will rage and oceans roar when Gabriel stands on sea and shore, and as he blows his wondrous horn, old worlds die and new be born. While perhaps not truly lost in terms of her name, the specific, often sensationally apocalyptic, verses that have attached themselves to Mother Shipton over centuries create a chilling, cobbled-together tapestry of a future where human ingenuity. Number 2. The Sibyl's oracles of falling stars and boiling seas. The Sibylline oracles are a collection of prophetic utterances composed in Greek hexameters, attributed to Sibyl's legendary prophetesses from ancient pagan traditions. These oracles were composed over a long period, from the 2nd century BCE to perhaps the 7th century CE, by various authors including Jewish and later Christian writers who adopted the Sibylline form to convey their own religious and political messages, often predicting doom for pagan empires and hope for their own communities. Many of these oracles were lost in the sense that they weren't part of mainstream religious canons and existed on the fringes, yet they contained some of the most vivid and terrifying dystopian imagery of the ancient world. They paint pictures of cosmic upheaval, societal collapse, and divine retribution on a grand scale. One recurring theme is the destruction of cities and empires, often Rome, depicted as a wicked entity. "O haughty Rome," one oracle laments, "a heavenly scourge from on high shall come upon thee. Thou shalt be a ruin for all time." Prophecies go far beyond political downfall. They describe apocalyptic environmental disasters. And then, in his anger, God will destroy the whole race of men by a mighty fire. One section proclaims, "Stars are prophesied to fall from the sky, and the stars shall all fall into the sea, and all the lights of heaven shall be dashed together. The sun and moon will be extinguished, plunging the world into darkness. The seas themselves will boil or dry up. And then shall all the elements of the world be widowed, when God, who dwells in the ether above, shall roll up the heaven as a book is rolled." Imagine the sky literally being rolled up like a scroll, the very fabric of reality coming undone. The oracles also describe a complete breakdown of human society and morality. There shall be no more respect for hospitality, nor for piety, nor for oaths. The world shall be full of evils. They speak of wars, famines, plagues, and internal strife that will decimate populations, and then shall a great and terrible famine come upon the whole earth, and men shall eat one another. The imagery is stark and brutal, intended to shock and warn. Some oracles detail the coming of an antichrist figure, or a malevolent ruler, Beliar, who will perform false miracles and lead many astray before a final divine intervention. These texts, compiled from diverse sources over centuries, often layered pagan fears with Jewish and Christian apocalyptic expectations, creating a potent and chilling vision of a future where the world order completely disintegrates. Their lost status outside of major scriptural traditions perhaps allowed for even more unrestrained and graphic depictions of dystopian futures. Number 1. The apocryphal apostles' vision of Paradise Lost and Reign of Terror. The Apocalypse of Thomas, Another lost book that didn't make it into the New Testament canon offers one of the most structured and chilling countdowns to the end of the world. This text, likely originating in the 2nd to 5th centuries, circulated among some Christian communities, but was eventually condemned by church authorities like Pope Gelasius I in the 5th century. It purports to be a revelation given by Jesus to the Apostle Thomas concerning the signs that will precede the end of the age. Unlike vaguer prophecies, the Apocalypse of Thomas lays out a 7-day, or sometimes interpreted as 7-year, sequence of escalating calamities, painting a picture of a world systematically dismantled and plunged into a dystopian nightmare before the final judgment. Prophecy begins with lesser signs, kings rising against kings, famines, pestilences, earthquakes. But as the 7 days progress, the intensity and cosmic scale of the disasters grow exponentially. On the first day, or first period, there will be a great voice in the heaven, terrifying rulers and causing the earth to shake. The second day will see the heavens themselves display horrors, with the pillar of fire appearing from the north from evening until morning. This is just the beginning. The third day brings a chasm in the firmament of heaven, its voice reaching the earth, filling all with fear. By the fourth day, the text describes the abyss appearing in the east, and all of creation groaning and being troubled. This suggests a complete breakdown of the natural order, a world coming apart at the seams. The fifth period is even more dire. On the fifth day, at the 6th hour, there shall be a great thunder in the heaven, and the powers of light shall be taken away, and the world shall be in darkness. This total darkness is accompanied by widespread despair and people desiring to die. Prophecy continues with the collapse of high buildings and cities, and the sea rising up in a terrifying flood. The sixth period speaks of the firmament being cloven from the east unto the west. And finally, the seventh period culminates in the coming of the Antichrist, who will perform false signs and wonders, deceive many, and usher in a reign of terror, persecuting the faithful. He will attempt to shorten the days of the elect. The text warns. This vision is chilling, not just for its destructive imagery, but for its systematic, almost procedural dismantling of the world, leading to a final dystopian society under a tyrannical deceiver. The lost nature of this text, once suppressed, allowed its stark sequential vision of doom to retain a particularly potent and unsettling power, a detailed blueprint for the end of all things.